there's so much cool stuff coming down the line. I wish I could tell you guys more, but it's so exciting.
You know, I hear from you guys, and you're, like you said, you're always working on something. And averagely, what is like the time frame of just a brand new product from start to finish? Years, months, weeks?
It's years. I mean, literally, 2 years is average.
2 years.
You know, if it's just you know, an upgrade or a refresh, or and we'll constantly do that. You know, you see the speaker, designator in front, like a 44, 48, or 51. That designates the year that driver was released.
Yes.
We're constantly upgrading them, and they may be small little changes. And, sometimes we'll throw some cosmetic changes in there just to, get the excitement up. But we're always making the products better. In fact, we do a lot of what we call running changes. And that happens a lot with amplifiers too, where if we start seeing failures, say one small failure, and to us, give you an example, the CXA amplifiers, we just got reports out of all the CXA amplifiers that we've sold, which is, literally, I think hundreds of thousands. Our defective rate is less than 2% actually defective. So that's 2 per 100. And you have to remember that, amplifiers are being installed by people that may or may not be trained. You don't know what they're putting them in, what type of vehicle, what type of electrical system, how they're setting them up, how they're tuning them, how they're running them. So that says a lot with, what our engineers doing. They're constantly, tweaking the products to make them better. And it's just like the forced air cooling in the back of the drivers. That was a running change. We introduced that for the first time in the Comp RT, and it's trickled its way down through the entire line. Now, we may not necessarily give it a whole new, number, because, if it's just one small change or, one change like that, it doesn't warrant, redoing the entire speaker, coming out with a new part number. We're just going to make it a little bit better. So, I love people. I always go to do trainings. I ask, what's the best amplifier in the world ever? If you could have any amplifier, any model, any year ever, what would you have? And it's funny to listen to some of the people that go back to the old ZRs, the old Punch, the old, PPI Art Series. And, I appreciate that, but it's like, you guys don't think we've had any better technology, than we had 25, 30 years ago. But hey, it's all personal choice. There's no right or wrong. That was some great gear. But,
I think it's nostalgia and placebo.
Oh, yeah.
With that. Yeah. It's like, oh, this is better. They don't make anything good nowadays. Like, man, I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
I'm guilty of that when it comes to cars. It's like, I like the older cars, the way they were built, and not, super old, because then you have to put a lot of money into them to fix them. But
right. Yeah, money pits, but they look nice and shiny going down the street. That's all that matters. Yeah. I like how you guys, whenever you mentioned the forced air cooling with the Comp RT, that it started with that, and then you moved it to other products and stuff. And I know from a designer aspect that forced air cooling isn't like, let's just put holes in it and it's forced air cooling. Like, there's a lot that goes into the size, diameter, just like an enclosure of a port. It's the same kind of concept.
You talk with, Chance and Daniel, the guys that actually do the mechanical engineer ends of that. And, they experiment with the diameter, the number, the placement, the angle that they're drilled in. They go through and test everything and, see what actually works the best. Obviously, if something, is really, really, really expensive and it just got a marginal improvement, that'll never make the cut because it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
But those guys, they're the masters at, making sure that things are designed and work the way they're supposed to. And the funny thing to me is, you see some of these speakers out there, not bagging on any other manufacturers, but they do the pull piece vent and that looks like forced air cooling. And it's like, those don't work together at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, just
each other.
Putting holes in your box and saying that makes it louder,
Yeah, that's a vent.
And that's the thing too, between the old Solo X and the new one. The old one had that just big hole on the bottom and no pull venting, and now the new one has all pull venting and no big hole on the bottom. So it makes sense. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You got to have one or the other.
The whole pull, vent was really put in place to let the pressure out from underneath the dust cap. So if you think about, look at a cutaway of a speaker, as that speaker, is drawn back into the basket, that's an area of high pressure. And you've seen speakers with the dust caps blown off. Well, that's pretty much what happens. So Steve, experimented with, putting a vent down the center, which took that pressure away, but it did something else. It gave you smoother, deeper, cleaner bass with less power, because you're not trying to compress that air and fighting that. And to go even farther into that, if you remember, the older speakers had anywhere from a 1/2 inch to 5/8 diameter vent in the back. And I've seen speakers out there with 2 or 3 inch diameter vents and huge voice coils.
Huge.
But and they call that a cooling vent. It really wasn't there for cooling. It was there to let pressure out, because not enough air is really moving in and out and changing places to really cool it. But what we did find, if you make that vent bigger, you actually take mass away from the pole piece, and that is the first place the heat gets drawn away from the voice coil. So you've effectively reduced your cooling sink for your speaker by having a bigger hole in the back. So yeah, you can put a bigger hole in the back and you get worse cooling.
And I know you guys know a lot about motors and magnets and cooling and just all those kind of properties, even though, there's always that guy, I blew my kickers on whatever, there's always that. But I think that's a different subject. But it's crazy how with your motors, you guys have like all one piece as the bottom plate, as the pull piece, just, to help with that heat transfer.
And that's called the unit plate.
That's crazy, and it makes sense. It makes sense.
We started doing that back in 1986 with the first, Comp A series. And it's just like anything else. When you take 2 pieces of material and you clamp them together, you glue them together or screw them together, you don't have as good of a heat transfer as you would if it was one solid piece of material. So yeah, by having that one solid forging, it was much better cooling. In fact, we had an issue with, some of our parts finding their way into other manufacturers' speakers. That's why if you look at the old Comp A series, a little bit down the line, they started stamping Stillwater designs right into the back plate of that speaker, so they couldn't be bogarted by somebody else and used in their products.
Well, now it's before, that everything always had a paper trail like it does now. They're like, oh yeah, here we go. That's crazy. I always thought you guys had that stamped in the back just because, it looks good. It looks legit. You see it on all the old ones and stuff. And who doesn't want to see a Stillwater design?
Steve's not, a big guy to be really flashy, and he's not there to, he wants things to look good and he wants them to perform. So to spend money to do something just, to say you did it, I mean, he'd rather put the money in, the performance of the product. So that was a very, deliberate move to make sure that, he protected, what he pioneered in those speakers.
Catch the Livin Loud with Andy show every Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 or 10 o'clock Eastern. Smash the like and subscribe.